Okay, so let us start with TestNG. TestNG is a unit testing framework. Okay, look, whatever we have done till now, alright, it only tells you how to interact with the browsers. We have learned Selenium. Selenium is a tool which can only interact with browsers. It won't help you build test cases. For test cases, we use TestNG. As I had explained you earlier as well, when you work practically, okay, you have got test cases. Okay, these are your test cases. For example, you have test case 1, then you have got test case 2, you have test case 3. Okay, and correspondingly, like, you want to run these test cases in certain order, or you want to run them parallelly, and while running you have to read the data from Excel file or some other file like properties file. Along with that, you want to generate some reports. Okay, reports in the sense you want HTML reports or something, right? And apart from that, you want to integrate, say, Jenkins, right? Or you want to integrate um, for example, grid, okay, and Maven. So I'll talk. So to actually work with all of this, you actually introduce TestNG in between. People also use they use BDD frameworks like Cucumber, okay, or people also use JUnit. So you can use anything, but TestNG is quite famous. So let us start with TestNG. Okay, what TestNG does is that it's like a centralized controller. Okay, it will help you read the data from Excel, call the test cases in certain order, help you generate the reports, integrate it with Jenkins, Grid, and Maven. So this is what TestNG will do. Okay, right. So the first thing is you have to install TestNG as a plugin uh, inside your Eclipse. Okay, for that you go to Google and type TestNG Eclipse. Right, TestNG is installed as a plugin. Okay, so you go to the first link. Since morning this website is down. Okay, since morning I'm not able to go to this website. This website is down. So when you go to this website, you get a link over there to download. Okay, for Eclipse 4.3 or above, you will find a link. Okay, so from there you need to copy that link actually. Okay, I'm getting a 503 server temporarily unavailable error. Okay, so you get a link over there. You need to go to help and install new software, and you need to paste that link over here. TestNG will come up in front of this checkbox. You need to check the checkbox and click next, and it will be installed as a plugin inside Eclipse. You will come to know. Okay, you will get the download link for that. There is no software you need to download, you just need to copy the link from there. Okay, after that you go to Windows Show View Other, and under Java you will see TestNG. This means that TestNG has installed. So during the installation as a plugin in Eclipse, your Eclipse might also restart. Help and go to install new software. Okay, right, you can refer the recordings, right, don't worry. So I'll make a new project over here. I'll make a new simple Java project. Okay, and I'll call it TestNG day 7. Okay, I'm sitting on a different machine today. So right, so in the 7th day we are learning TestNG. Fine. Now once you have done this, right, you go to the source folder and create a new package. Package means a folder inside a folder. So under the source folder I'm creating a new folder which is known as a package. I'll call it as test cases. Fine. And under this I'll create a new class known as, say for example, you have to book ticket. Okay, book ticket test. So how do you implement TestNG? Alright, because if you talk about Selenium, then Selenium in this diagram is only this much, this blue box. Selenium will only have commands which can interact with the browsers. Okay, Selenium will not have commands with which you can actually you know, generate reports or build test cases and all. Alright, so just 1 minute, I'll increase the font. So that's why we use TestNG. Alright, so over here you will make a test annotation @test public void say search flight. Okay, and you move the mouse over this error and you will get the option to add TestNG library in the project. You can add that, right, and you can move the mouse again and you will get the option to import the TestNG annotation. Okay, so you import this annotation and also import TestNG as a library. This library will have nothing but few jar files. Alright, fine. Now @test means that this is a test case. There is no main function in TestNG. Okay, so you can print inside it system.out.println searching flight. Okay, so when you run this code, you will see that in the output, you click on the run button, or you'll get test cases run 1, failure 0, skip 0. There is no main function. Or you can also right click on this file and run it as a TestNG test. It will run as a TestNG test. Okay, you also get the results of running the class. Okay, these are the results. Okay, right, now this is the test case, search flight. Fine, and when you run it, if you refresh the project, you will get a test output folder in which you will get the default HTML reports as well. Okay, if you open this index.html, you will find TestNG reports. Okay, it's taking a little while to load. Yeah, these are the reports. Okay, but these are not very comprehensive or not very readable reports. We'll look at better reporting. Okay, these are default TestNG reports. They're not so good that you can deliver them to a client or something. Okay, right, so in TestNG you have this @test annotation, and whatever you function you give, that becomes a test case. Alright, you can have different test annotations. You can write @test public void book flight. Okay, or say select flight. Alright, so inside it you can type okay, and then you can have @test public void buy ticket. Okay, so you can have different TestNG annotations. Okay, each TestNG annotation will be considered as a test case. So these three will be considered as different test cases. Alright, fine. So when you run this, you see that total test runs are 3. Right, okay. So in the output you will see that it is printing buying ticket, searching flight, selecting flight. Now this output is not in the order in which we had written these 3 tests. Okay, we were if look, they will not be in order. Don't think that first function will be executed first, then the second one, then the third one. This is never going to happen. Okay, right, so TestNG has got its own ordering mechanism. Actually you can prioritize the test cases. You can mention over here that priority of this test case is 1. Okay, then after that the priority of the next test case is 2. Priority of the third test case is 3. Now they will run in the order after you have prioritized these test cases. If you run this code, you will see that they are running in order. Okay, right, I hope you are getting my point. Fine. Alright, now moving further. Okay, in TestNG you can also do what you say, you can also do validations. Okay, right. So out here I'll create a new class known as validations. Alright, and inside validations class I'll have a test annotation, public void say test app. So look, what is testing? Testing is something in which we have a actual value and an expected value. You have to compare both of them. Okay, majorly we have got some expected result and actual result. Right, so you just import this test annotation. Right, so there is a class known as assert. This class is internal in TestNG. Okay, if I write assert dot, you will get the function assert equals. Select this. Make sure you select the org.testng package, not the JUnit or some other. Okay, so assert equals will compare two values. You can give the actual value here and the expected after that. Say I write actual is A and expected is B. Alright, so when you run this code, it will fail the test case because both of them are not equal. See, failures are 1. Right, expected B but was found A. You will get this in the error message as well. Fine. So assertions, they help you to compare the actual result with the expected result. Okay, right. Now you can also have assertion like assert dot assert true, in which you give some condition, a condition which evaluates to true or false, and an error message. What will this assertion do? For example, I give a condition 2 greater than 1. 2 greater than 1 is true. So if it is true, then this assertion will pass. If I run this code, you won't get any error. But however, if I write 2 greater than 11, which is false, and I'm asserting true, and if I run this, I will get the error, I'll get the exception, I'll get the failure. Okay, expected true but was found false. Right. So this condition should evaluate to true always. It should always evaluate to true. If it is not evaluating, then you have to throw the error message. Right. Where will it be used? For example, we had made a function. Remember, we made a function is element present. So if the element is not present, okay, then you will get the error message that it is not present. Okay, we had made this function in the earlier days, so you can use it over there. Alright, so you have these validation functions. Sometimes you are quite sure that the test is failing. For example, there is a link which should not be there and it is there. Or for example, you realize that while executing some tests, say you had to be logged in this scenario, and you found that you are not logged in, and obviously the test case has to be failed. So if you have to deliberately fail the test case, then you need to write assert.fail with the corresponding error message. Okay, right, so whatever error message you give over here will come up in the output. Alright, so if I run this code, you will see assertion error message will be written out here. Okay, right? So this is how you manage assertions. Okay, but there's a problem with assertions. The problem is it stops the program. Okay, what do I mean by saying it stops the program? Uh, if I'm typing, say if I'm typing A and after that I type B, okay, right, and if I run this code, it will print A but will not print B if the assertion is failing. It stops the program from execution. Okay, sometimes the errors or the failures are not so critical. For example, the title of the page is not matching, so but the page is correct. So you can actually decide that fine, I will report a failure but I will continue with the test case. Why to stop the test case in between? Okay, right. So why do we okay, there's a question being asked that why would we force a failure? Sometimes you know that the test has failed, you are at a situation that you are sure. Okay, Myth, I will answer that question in some time. Alright, not today, in some days that will be clear. Right, so that's the thing. Now I was talking about this assertion failure, right? Look, the thing is, this failure error message comes up and you are sure that the test has failed. Okay, and it stops the flow. We don't want to stop the flow at times. So over there what we do is that we don't use this hard assertion, we use something known as soft assertions. Okay, there is an internal class for this. The class is soft assert. Okay, you create the object for that class, right? You import this, right, and you write soft assert dot assert equals, you give some actual value A compared with say A, right? So you can have multiple validations in it, A compared with A1, A2. So these two are supposed to fail and these two are supposed to pass. So in the output you should get the error message that there were actually two failure messages in this. Okay, so when you run this you don't get anything, you get failure 0. The reason for that is in soft assertions it is mandatory to write this line in the end, soft assert dot assert all. Okay, so this has to be mandatorily executed in the end. So when you run this, you see that it reports a failure, and in the results you see that the following assertions failed. These two, it will show both of them, right? Okay, so you can have multiple failures this way without stopping the program. Alright, so this won't stop the program. The earlier assertion is something which will stop the program from executing. Okay, right. Now suppose you are running the test cases. You have this @test annotation priority 1. Right. It is similar to verify. Okay. Right. So this is a test annotation. These are test annotations. Right. And suppose we have a assertion failure out here. If I put an assertion, assert dot fail, some reason. Okay, there's a question being asked that assert all will catch all. No, this is something like fine, you validate everything, and if anything fails you just report it in the reports. Okay, it won't catch or something. This is the final line which will actually validate everything. Okay, if you don't write this, then even if it is failing, it won't be reported that it's failed. Okay, right. So now out here you have the message assert.fail in search flight. Right, so if I run this code, this will fail search flight, but select flight and buy ticket will be executed. Okay, but this is not something which has to be done. Both these functions should not be executed, because obviously when you are not able to search the flight, how can you select or buy the ticket? Right, so there is a dependency between the test cases which has to be introduced, and that can be mentioned over here. You can write over here depends on methods. Okay, and you can give the method name search flight, that is select flight is dependent on search flight method. Then you have got buy ticket method, and you can write over here that this is also dependent on select flight. Okay, so when you run this, Rajiv, we don't have verify in TestNG, we just have soft assertions. Verify used to be long back, it's there in IDE, it's not out here. Okay, so out here you see that when you run this, the other two functions, they are skipped. Buy ticket is, yeah, it's coming now. There might be some temporary issue, so it's not coming. These two yellow means both are skipped. Okay, right. You can make this buy ticket dependent on both select flight as well as search flight. You can mention both the names over here if you want. Just a minute. Okay, in the array you can give both the names. Alright, so this function will be dependent on both of these. Right. Okay, so if any one of these fails, this will skip. If you want to deliberately skip a test case, sometimes you are running 100 test cases and you don't want to run like 100, you just want to run say 20 of them. So you want to deliberately skip the test cases at that point of time. Okay, so if you want to deliberately skip the test cases, then the command is throw new skip exception. So this command will deliberately skip the test cases. You will throw the skip exception, throw new skip exception. Alright, so when you run this, you see that the first test case will skip, it will not execute, and the other will obviously skip because the first one was, the other two were dependent on the first one. Okay, right. So you can build test cases, you can bring dependencies between them, you can prioritize them, you can introduce validations in them, right? And you can also in TestNG you can also do some pre and post activities. For example, it's not just about the test annotation, there are other annotations in TestNG as well. For example, there is annotation before test. public void, I will just call it before test. Okay, you move the mouse over this error and import it, and there is an annotation known as @ after test. Import this as well. Just a minute, my mouse is hanging, PC is hanging. Okay, right, and in before test you print alright, in after test you print after executing. So when you run this, you will notice that in the output, before test will be executed before executing all the tests, and after test will be executed after executing all the tests. Okay, suppose you have to open the browser and execute all the tests, right? Then you can open the browser in before annotation, and after you can close the browser. Right, so maybe you can connect to database over here, use the database in the test cases and close the connection here. Right, it depends on what you want to do. Right. Okay, now the thing is, the annotations, they have a predefined order of execution. It doesn't matter if I keep this before test, after test over here, or if I keep them anywhere, it doesn't matter. There is a predefined order in which they execute, and that's going to be followed. Right. Similarly, you have got @ before method. Okay, you can make a function public void before method. Alright, and import it, and you have an annotation after method. Okay, right, so what do these do? Alright, in before method I'm going to type before method, and in after method I am going to type after method. When I run this runs, and you see before method and after method are executed before and after executing every test case. Right, so it will help you a lot in report generation. For example, for every test case you would want to have a different set of reports or something, right? So that helps over there. Okay, right, so before method and after method are executed before and after executing every test. Okay, right, there is another annotation. That annotation helps you to run one test case multiple times with different sets of data. Okay, for example, I'll make a new class over here known as login test. Okay, and I will make an annotation @test public void do login. Alright, and you import it. Suppose this is single test, but I want to run the login test with different sets of usernames and passwords. Alright, so in TestNG what we have is we take a two-dimensional array, okay, and we put the data in a two-dimensional array with some rows and some columns. Okay, the number of rows are equal to number of times you want to run the test, and number of columns are equal to number of parameters in the test case. Out here we have 4 rows, so data for the first row we will keep over here, data for the second iteration, data for the third iteration, data for the fourth. You can keep over here for username, password. In each cell you can write username U1, password P1, say browser on which you want to do the testing, phone number and all you can keep. So second set of data you can keep here U2, P2, right? Okay, every cell has an index. Okay, I hope you might be knowing this indexing, right? The first cell is 0 0, this cell is 0 1, similarly 0 2, this one is 1 0, okay, this one is 1 1, this one is 1 2, this is 2 0, okay, right? So you keep the data in a two-dimensional grid, alright, and supply it to this test case. How do you supply this data to the test case from the two-dimensional grid? That happens with another annotation. That annotation is known as data provider. Data provider will help you to run one test multiple times with different sets of data. Okay, right, so you make this data provider. Okay, inside it you make this two-dimensional data array with some rows, say 3 rows and 2 columns. Okay, you have the first parameter as rows and second parameter as column. Alright, so how do you run this? The first step is you build the data provider. Okay, in this data array you fill up the values. Alright, row number 1. Later on we will be reading these values from an Excel file. Okay, 1 0 is say password 1, and then you put up 1 minute data for every row, row 2, row 3, sorry, this one should be here, I'm sorry, 2 0 2 1. Okay, first row, second row, third row, you can put some different username, password. You fill this data array with usernames and passwords. Okay, you have got 3 rows because I mentioned 3 rows over here, and every row has got 2 columns, right? And you return this data array. Okay, so this data array will be returned to this function. So the first step is that you build this data provider. The second step is you tell the test case that data has to be coming from this data provider. Okay, you link the test case with the data provider. You mention over here that for this test the data provider is get data. Okay, you mentioned that for this test case the data provider is get data. Alright, fine. First step is you build the data provider, second is you link the test case, third is, and the most important, the number of input parameters in this function should be same as number of columns. If there are two columns, then you have to have two input parameters. Okay, you can print over here username and the password. Okay, so when you run this code, it runs. You don't have to do anything. It runs 3 times. It prints these values. It is running 3 times. Okay, in the TestNG output you will see it's running 3 times. You don't have to do anything. TestNG will come, look at this test case, see that the data provider is this, it will go inside this function, find that there are 3 rows, so it will run the first row, second row and the third row. First it will pass u1 in username, p1 in password, then u2 in username, p2 in password. Make sure the number of rows which you have mentioned over here are equal to the number of input parameters in the function. If you are putting input parameters, if you are putting 2 input parameters, then it is mandatory to put 2 rows. People generally put say 3 rows and 3 input parameters, and say if you are putting 2 input parameters, they are not giving 2 over here. And if you run this, okay, if you run this with lesser or more number of input parameters, you will get an exception, method matcher exception. Okay, right, so you have to be careful with this. Okay, the number of parameters should be same. TestNG will automatically detect and execute the test multiple times. So practically what we do, yesterday we had seen how to read from the Excel file, right? So we read the data from the Excel file and we fill this 2-dimensional object array with that data. We don't hard code the data like this, and then we supply to the test case. Okay, before and after method annotations, if you want to use, you can use them out here as well. Okay, if I put in this same before test, after test, before method, after method. Okay, if I run this, you will see that before a test will be executed before executing all the 3 runs, after test will be executed after executing all the 3 runs, but before method and after method, these two will be executed each time the test case is executed. For u1 p1 it is executed, for u2 p2, for u3 p3 as well. Generally these are quite important because for every test you want to generate different reports and all, and you can generate it from here. Okay, right, now there is no priority in this. First row will be executed first, then the second row, then the third row. Okay, right, now you can also run the tests in batch and all. Okay, so now till now what we have done is we have done 3 tests separately and we can run each of them, right? Okay, but how do you run all of them together in a batch? For that we use a file known as testng.xml. Okay, this is the file. I'll copy it and I will paste it under the project. Under the project I've pasted it. If I, not in the source folder, under the project, open this file, and in this file you can have your test suite name and the test cases. For example, the first test you can put up as login test which you want to execute. test cases dot login test package. Second is say book ticket test. This name, this test name, you can put any name over here, but in the classes tag you have to put the name of the right class. I copied it, Rajiv, instead of making it. You can also copy mine, it doesn't make a difference. Okay, right, so out here you can make book ticket test, and then the third is validations test. Okay, you can call it test cases dot validations. So you can have all the tests mentioned in this file in the serial order. They will be executed when you run in batch. To run in batch, you can right click on this XML file, select run as TestNG suite, and it's going to run everything in one go, starting from login test, then book ticket, then validations. Okay, and in the test output folder you will be seeing the report for each test. Okay, right, now the thing is, this is fine, you can run in batch, right, you can use testng.xml, fine, and this will be used in the framework a lot. These concepts will be used a lot in the framework. Whatever I am teaching you, whatever I've taught you, WebDriver, reading from Excel, TestNG, everything will be used in the frameworks. Okay, now if I make a new project, hold on, I'll make a new Java project called as TestNG Parallel. We can see how to do the parallel execution in this with the help of TestNG. In this project I've made 3 test cases executed serially with testng.xml. What if I want to execute them in parallelly? Okay, for example, in source folder over here I'll make a package known as test cases. Under this package I'll create 3 classes, say test A, test B, test C. Okay, in test A you keep a function at the rate test, public void test A, fine, add TestNG library, import test, and you can print starting A, pause for 5 seconds, ending A, right. Similarly, in test B you can write test B, starting B, ending B, and in test C you can write this. Okay, so you can have 3 different test cases, test A, test B, test C, and you can have this testng.xml file. Okay, what you can do, you can run all the 3 test cases with this in a batch. Okay, in testng.xml you can mention the first test case as, say, test A. It is inside the test cases package. Then test B. And test C. So you can have all these three tests in testng.xml, and you can right click on this XML, run as testng suite. So it's going to run. Okay, hold on, what is happening? Yeah, it's running, just hold on. So test A starts, after 5 seconds it will end, B will start, after 5 seconds B will run, C will start, and C will end. Right? Okay. So you are running them serially, but you can also run them parallelly. It's quite easy. Okay. You can mention over here in the suite tag, you can mention a tag known as parallel equals to tests. When you write this parallel equals to tests, that means all the test cases have to be executed parallelly. So when you run this as a TestNG suite, all A, B and C will be executed parallelly. See, it starts all of them. B gets started a little early than C and A, but it starts all of them together more or less and ends all of them together. So you can run the tests parallelly. Okay, look, the thing is, if you are able to run the tests parallelly, then what is the use of Selenium Grid? You guys have must have heard about Selenium Grid. Okay, right, Selenium Grid is something which will help you to run the test cases parallelly. But out here TestNG is running parallelly. Look, if you want to run them parallelly on a single machine, like I have a single machine, you can use this way. But if you have multiple machines on a network and you want to run the tests parallelly on different machines to save time, then we use grid. In grid we have a hub and we have nodes. Okay, nodes are connected to the hub. Our code, or you can say TestNG project, is lying on the hub. Hub machine is connected to other node machines. All the test cases, they are executed parallelly with TestNG. When all the test cases are executed parallelly with TestNG, all the test cases start and they hit the hub. When you write over here parallel equals to tests, this thing, so all the test cases will run parallelly and hit the hub. Hub will then send the test cases to different nodes for execution. But initially the parallelism of test cases is achieved with TestNG. Okay, TestNG invokes the test cases parallelly. Grid is a medium. Grid will not run the test cases parallelly. TestNG will run. TestNG code will be on hub. Okay, TestNG code will invoke the test cases parallelly on grid, hub, and hub will distribute on the nodes. So grid is a medium of distribution of test cases to the nodes. Grid never facilitates the parallel running, it never invokes the test cases parallelly, but yes, it will facilitate that the tests are executed on different nodes. Okay, right, so this was about TestNG. Okay, with TestNG you can execute the tests parallelly, you can have some You can have everything, you can have tests and all. Now you can generate reports, you can read the data from Excel, you can run it with Ant, you can run it with Maven. There are different things, okay, which we will be talking about. Fine, I cannot start with the next topic. The reason being, I am not on my PC. I have lost the charger of my laptop actually, so it's not started. So I cannot start off with the next topic. That is the problem. I will have to stop here. But before that, anybody with any questions regarding exercises, regarding anything which you were not able to do? Anything?